Hey everybody, welcome back to the Consumer Warrior Podcast. The podcast is dedicated to helping you with your big debt problems. If you're just dabbling in debt, this isn't the podcast for you. We deal with the big problems here, like repossession, debt collection, lawsuits, foreclosure, bankruptcy, and all those other horrible financial problems that are out there. We help you to help yourself. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, John Skiba, and today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by the Consumer Warrior Project. And what the Consumer Warrior Project is something that I developed. It's a platform that helps you with your debt problems. I provide you with the tools and resources that you need to be able to navigate difficult things like debt collection lawsuits, how to settle debts, maybe if you're thinking for bankruptcy. There's tools and forms and online tutorials that I have over at legal.coach. That's the actual website. Go over to www.legal.coach, and you'll be able to find all these resources, downloads, templates, tutorials, everything you need to help you to get out of debt once and for all. And in today's episode of the podcast, I want to share with you, this is what I'm going to call the number one thing to help you to deal with your debt problem. And what this is, before I jump into giving you exactly what this number one thing is, I want to share with you a story as far as someone that I met with in my law practice not long ago. Now, this woman, she called me for a consultation with my practice because her wages were being garnished. And they'd been garnished for quite some time, and it was really making it difficult for her to be able to support her family. And, my heart goes out to people. I know how this can be. In Arizona here where I practice law, if you get a wage garnishment, they can take 25% of your check. Now, I know that some people don't live paycheck to paycheck. A lot of people do, but if you don't, even if you don't, getting 25% of every single paycheck taken is going to be a big hardship on your family. And so she called me trying to, to talk about what are the different options that she had in being able to deal with this wage garnishment and get out of debt once and for all. And as I talked to her and went through the entire process, as far as, how the judgment came about, what the debt's related to, I unfortunately, at the end of our meeting, I told her, there wasn't a whole lot I could do for her unless she was really ready to file for bankruptcy. And here's why. What this was an old credit card that, she fell into some difficult times and she couldn't make the payments on it anymore. And so the card went into collections. And the collector started calling, as they do, a lot of phone calls, letters, different things like that. And she wasn't inclined to settle because she wasn't able to settle. She wasn't able to make payments on it. So this debt got older and older, and in about 6 months, it got charged off. Still some collection calls, collection agencies were contacting, and she wasn't able to do anything with it. Eventually, it was sold to a debt-buying entity who then filed a lawsuit. They filed the lawsuit, and the process server came by her house and served her with a copy of this lawsuit. I asked her, okay, so once you got the lawsuit, what did you do with it at that point? She said, I didn't do anything with it. I wasn't sure what I should do. I didn't know if I should actually file a response. I didn't know if I needed to get an attorney. I didn't do anything at that point. And because she didn't do anything, a default judgment got entered against her. And once the creditors get the judgment, that's what they want. That's what gives them all the power. Once they had that judgment, they started the wage garnishment. And I asked her, okay, so the wage garnishment started how long ago? Started several months ago. And I said, well, what did you do once you got that wage garnishment? And she said, I didn't do anything at that point. And now, here we are, fast forward several months later, and it's a true crisis situation. It's a situation where she cannot afford to buy, the basics, groceries, gas for the car, things like that. Not only that, it's just demoralizing to go to work every day, all day, only to have 25% of every paycheck taken. So here's the lesson you can learn from this person's experience, because I run into this a lot with clients, and that is they do nothing. They do nothing when it comes to their debt problems until it reaches a crisis situation. And the problem with that is once it reaches that crisis situation like this person here, there's very little we can do. And the reason is because what I like to say is now the creditor has all the hammers. They have all the leverage. They have an active wage garnishment. So if we want to go in and try to settle the account, offer some kind of amount less than what's owed, they're going to want pretty much the full amount. And the reason is because now they've gone through the expense of getting a judgment and they have an active wage garnishment. They could tell us to pound sand and they're going to get the exact same amount every 2 weeks unless you quit your job or file for bankruptcy. So because this person did not take action, because this person ignored the problem, and trust me, I understand the temptation to ignore. You either don't know what to do, you don't have any money to do anything, even if you wanted to do it. It becomes very, very difficult. I understand that. The problem is along the way here, those various points, whether it was just in the beginning with debt collection calls, whether it was the initial lawsuit, whether it was a wage garnishment, if action was taken at any of those points along the way, this person would have been in a much better situation to try to settle the debt or even go back to the court and try to unwind some of what had been done. But if you wait until it reaches a crisis situation, until you cannot pay for your basic living expenses, the chances of settling that debt for anything reasonable at all are slim to none. And that's what I told her. I said, I would love to be able to help you. I feel for your situation, but there's just not a whole lot I can do at this point. And so really what they were left with is just toughing it out and sticking with the garnishment and getting it paid or filing for bankruptcy, which weren't, I understand those aren't attractive options. So the point of this brief episode of the podcast is if you're dealing with serious debt problems, and I'm assuming that you are if you're listening to this podcast, is to take action. You may not know what to do, and that's what this podcast is for. That's what the Consumer Warrior Project is for. That's why I put together legal.coach, because you can go there and you can get educated on what it is you can do to deal with the problems. If you see something pop up on your credit report, if you see something show up in the mail, if you have a process server come by like this person did, any of those things, you need to take action and make this year of 2018 the year of action, the time when you learn. We talked about in the last episode finding out what your debt issues are, really getting a grasp of what kind of debts you're dealing with, and then looking at different options you can do to resolve them. Because the sooner you deal with the problem, the earlier on you get involved and take action, you have a lot more options. You have court options, you have settlement options, you still have bankruptcy options. You have a lot of things which, if you wait until, again, it's a crisis, then your options are very limited, and you have the sad conversation I had with this person, which is there may be not there really much I can do to help you. I'm sorry, and you have to deal with it, or pull the trigger on a bankruptcy. So that's a cautionary tale. In today's episode of the podcast is to take action. Again, part of the problem why a lot of people don't take action is because they don't know what to do. They don't know what their options are. Tune into the podcast. Share this podcast with people who are going through those problems. Head on over to legal.coach. Learn about what some of the resources and the tools and the tutorials are. Over there at that same website, you're going to see blog posts and other videos. Go to my YouTube channel. Get the information there. That reminds me, I should bring up here in the podcast that if you go and over to YouTube and search my name, John Skiba, Skiba, or Consumer Warrior Project, you're going to find my YouTube channel. Every one of these episodes of the podcast, I have a video portion of it as well, kind of a little behind the scenes of what we're doing here. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Consumer Warrior Podcast. I appreciate you taking the time to listen in today. And again, I appreciate the sponsor of the show, the Consumer Warrior Project. Head on over there to legal.coach. Check that out and all the resources that are available there. And I will catch you next time.